Welcome back to the Madison Advisory AI Podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Verner Thompson, founder of Madison Advisory AI. This show sits at the intersection of technology, leadership, and judgment. Because while AI is accelerating decisions everywhere, thoughtful human insight still determines whether those decisions actually create value. Today's conversation centers on the most important voice in healthcare, the patient. My guest is Matt Toresco, a patient advocate and healthcare industry veteran whose personal journey through complex care shaped a practical framework he calls EMPWRD. We'll talk about what patient empowerment actually looks like, where AI is already making clinicians more human, and what both patients and health systems can do differently starting now. Matt, welcome.
Thank you. Appreciate being here.
As an introduction for our listeners, can you take us back to the moment when you realized that the healthcare system wasn't listening to your story?
Yeah, I think the first time I actually realized it, we have to go way back. So I broke my neck in 2005. They missed that diagnosis of broken C6, C7, T1 in 2005. It took 5 months for them to find it, but that wasn't even it. What it was in 2008, I was continuing to struggle with neuropathy and pain, and a local neurologist said, "Oh, I can handle that," and did what's called a facet nerve ablation, which is burning the ends of the nerves in my spinal cord, claiming that, oh, they're overactive, right? Now, mind you, he had sent me for x-rays, a CT scan, all of it, to find out that he never looked at the scans or even got deep into understanding what I was telling him I was feeling until after he did the first procedure. And it was after the first procedure that he called me when I was literally pulling into my parents' driveway back in 2008. I can remember the phone call vividly, in which she's like, just recognize I hadn't had a chance to look at your scripts, but your spine never fused. That's why you're in pain. So that ablation's not going to do anything. Wow. Where could I have been, or how much faster could I have gotten the care that I needed if you would have slowed down and listened rather than come in with a predisposed plan based off of what he thought?
Right. And
So,
your background has been in pharma, biotech, and health care in
yeah.
general,
Yep.
and you still struggled
Yeah.
finding the
It
right
took
form of care. Yeah.
it took me 18 years to get my spine fixed. 18 years of opiates, because that's the default pain treatment. Everyone was focused on the pain. No one was focused on why there was pain. And that was the biggest problem I had to overcome. And as you said, I've worked in the industry for over 20 years now. I grew up in a house where my mom was a nurse. We knew how to have conversations with doctors. We knew what their thoughts were, so to speak, about patients that come in and have an idea in their head of what things are. But even in that early time frame for me, it's very easy as a patient to put your gut feelings aside when a doctor's telling you their perception, right? That white coat syndrome really kicks in and you leave yourself out of that discussion.
Yeah, I could see that. And that all did change for you. So what finally changed when you found the right advocate?
So it was right around 2022 or mid 2022. And I was actually speaking with my therapist, of all things. And it was my therapist who said, I don't think I'm supposed to do this. It might be a HIPAA violation, but you should speak with another one of my patients. He is a advocate for folks with cervical spinal injury, mainly in the domain of car accidents and whiplash. But he himself has been hit 12 to 15 times. I mean, it's South Carolina. We bring the the worst of all drivers to the state, and he gets it. So it can't hurt to get a different opinion. But mind you, he's a chiropractor. So as someone who's had 4 spine surgeries, that's the last thing you want to see as a chiropractor. But I said, whatever. At the end of the day, it's got to be better than what I'm going through now. I knew it was different when the first words out of his mouth were, I'm not going to adjust you. I just want to talk. I want to understand from your first injury that wasn't even related to your spine to where we're at today. And it was just a complete paradigm shift.
And when you met with him, that was a 2.5 hour appointment. What did that represent to you?
Someone actually seeking to understand me, someone that was willing to listen to me and not just label me like many other doctors had. So many would just label me a drug seeker when I was not there looking for drugs. I was looking there for an answer to why I had pain. And that is a massive change for patients that are in chronic pain when someone's willing to say, "Tell me what you're feeling." Because everybody's pain perception is different. What works for one's not going to work for another. But that's unfortunately where medicine has gone, is these very cookie cutter standard approaches based off of X amount of patients that they've seen. And if that worked over there, maybe it's going to work for you. So we'll try it. And that's just not reality.
I completely agree. The pain scale is so hard to even to wrap your head around because a one for someone is completely different than a one for somebody else,
I
and
mean,
vice versa.
good luck distilling the emojis out too, right? Because it's a one, but it's 1 to 10, but now they have emoji and faces in there, and it's like, okay, I want to say I'm a 10, but I'm not in tears,
Right.
right? Like I'm also a guy. Like, does that matter, right? So it just drives more confusion than anything.
I could see that. And so that first experience you had in the 2.5 hour meeting really shaped and became the foundation for what you do today with patient advocacy. And when people hear the word patient advocate, because some of our listeners maybe haven't heard that word as frequently, what do you think is usually misunderstood?
Sure. So I would say that most people hear the words patient advocate when they call their insurance company, because that's also what insurance company representatives call themselves. Let's go to the antithesis of this. A typical patient advocate is an independent third party. They don't work for a hospital. They don't work for an insurance company. They don't work for the doctor. They're there for you. And that's ultimately, unfortunately, what everybody needs this at this point in healthcare. Our system has gotten to a point where if you don't know how it works and you don't know that you can appeal, let's say, a denial, then you're stuck. So what an advocate does is they come alongside of you. They're experts in all different things, right? So you might have an advocate that is really good with MS. You might have another advocate that's really good with chronic pain. And my advice to people looking for patient advocates is the same advice I give when you're thinking about a doctor, which is when that advocate is no longer serving you, or if you've maybe hit the limit of their education, fire them and find another one. It's okay to do that. This is an economic transaction at the end of the day. That's what healthcare is. So if they're not getting you what you need, or if you don't feel like you're being heard, find another one.
And what don't patient advocates do?
So there's a wide array of what advocates will do, up to literally you can sign over power of attorney for a loved one. Let's say my parents who are in Jersey, I'm here in Charleston, South Carolina. Let's say they need an advocate. I can get them to sign over power of attorney to engage with doctors, engage with insurance companies on their behalf. There's a very far extent that they will go. What they won't do is they don't give medical guidance, right? They it's their job to help you navigate this everly increasing complex system of who's the right specialist to see, where am I going, why am I going there, but also to serve to help get your questions answered that you might have when you come out of a doctor's appointment, or before you go in, or be better prepared going into an appointment. That's really where an advocate shines.
Okay. And for those that don't know where, how do you find if they don't know someone, how do you find a patient advocate?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different ways to go about it. First and foremost, there is a certification board, right? So if you see the term BCPA, that's Board Certified Patient Advocate. I am the public board member for the Patient Advocacy Certification Board, and really, all that means is that this individual has been certified to understand health insurance, to understand care navigation, to understand how health systems work. So you definitely want to make sure that you find someone with a BCPA. You can find individual advocates on the PACB website, but then there are also groupings of independent advocates out there. So something called GNA, or Greater National Advocates. That's one site you can check. They also have regional groupings of GNA. So GNA Southeast, GNA Arizona. You can check out their websites. And then one other group would be CHICAO, which is the Coalition of Healthcare. See, Coalition of Healthcare. Coalition of Healthcare Advocacy Organizations. So what
Okay.
CHICAO is that they have gone out to groups like GNA and others that are smaller and said, let us work together to the benefit of patients, right? So you'll find a ton of listings. At this point, there are about 1,600 BCPAs in the US. Small numbers when you really think about it, but doing amazing work.
And how much has that grown? I imagine it is growing now.
Yes.
And if I'm correct in that, why do you think that profession's growing
The
at the moment?
profession's growing because, again, since COVID, more people have been exposed to using their health insurance and realizing how little they know. So, and at the same time, those that have been through it, like myself, don't want others to have to go through what they're going through. And with the advent of the BCPA and this certification board for patient advocacy, it was really that foundational level of we have a credentialing body, we have a national certification. This is not a buddy from down the street. It could be, but they have that deep level expertise. And really what we see is that the more people that are spurned by the healthcare system, the more advocates we get. Right. And
Yeah.
it's natural in any business venture. It's like, well, let's find the problem. Let's fix the problem. If we can address the problem, we can make some money. Right. And that's really where the growth is coming from is people who don't want to have to allow others to, like myself, to dwell for 18 years in chronic pain when there's better solutions out there.
Yeah, they saw the problem and found a solution. And you've taken your lived experience and really developed a framework around that. If we can dive into that a little bit, what
Sure.
is empowered at a high level?
So empowered is a model to take, let's say, take the advocacy process, the self-advocacy process, and simplify it, right? Unfortunately, those that need a patient advocate typically can't afford it. Because they are roles that are not covered by insurance, it's cash pay, right? And the hourly rate, depending on what your ask is for them, varies. So my mentality is this: how can we equip every patient with the skills that they need to not be experts by any means, but to at least see what's happening in the system and understand the why behind it, have some understanding of the economics of it, to have some understanding of the power play at stake in this, and just to be able to witness what's taking place.
And so when we get to educated and motivated of the empowered, how does one become educated and motivated without becoming a medical expert?
Yeah. So when I say educated is really more on the system level, right? You have a hospital, you have your doctor's office. Is your doctor's office separate from the hospital or are they owned by the hospital? Do you know that? Right? If you see on the building that your doctor is at, that it's the name of the hospital medical office building, that means that that provider, like 80% of doctors today, are owned by the hospital, which means that their decision making is limited most of the time, right? So just recognizing things like that. And I'm in the process of building out an educational platform so that folks can come to that, dive in, but ultimately, if you can, read 10 minutes a day. If you can just take a look at what's happening in the healthcare world, may it be the 15,000 nurses that went on strike in New York yesterday, right? Why is that? What are they asking for? Who's their boss that they're trying to ask for money from, right? That just begins to peel back for you the layers of complexity in a health system and how decisions are made.
I was just discussing that particular potential strike and what it might be like to be a patient in that position when you know that's
Absolutely.
going on.
Yeah.
It has to be. And that's one instance where you really want to be educated about what's
Yeah.
happening in the hospital.
And we get it. Patients are going to be frustrated because they feel like people don't care about them. And to be quite honest with you, most hospitals don't. Most businesses in healthcare, from my experience, have yet to recognize that the patient is their customer. They see the insurance companies or the doctors, depending on the business, as their customer because for them, that's where they're getting paid, right? But we know that the first payer, the person who pays the first bill, it's not the insurance company, it's the patient,
And
right?
perhaps I'm naive, but I do think the healthcare industry is moving towards patient-centered care.
We've had the terminology patient centric since 2009. It's been a failure to launch. Now, do I think that businesses are and systems are moving in the right direction? Yeah. Do they need a kick in the ass? Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess that does line up to here. So when we look about the P in empowered,
Yeah.
prepared,
Yep.
when you and I spoke, we did discuss it's about 7 minutes that you have with your doctor on
On
average.
average. Yep.
So how does prepared weave into that?
Yeah. So if you've educated yourself and you're motivated to heal yourself or to find the next best solution, right? Because that's a challenge. There's a lot of energy that gets expended trying to find the next right option for you. Then you have to prepare, right? So if you know going in that you have max 7 minutes with your doctor, what are the 2 to 3 questions you want to ask them before they walk out, right? That preparation and also thinking about the symptoms that you've had, what you've been feeling, how you've been sleeping, pain scores, appetite, all of the different elements that make you you on a daily basis. How have they been impacted? That ensures that when you get into the doctor's office and they come in and see you after you spent the majority of your time with the nurse, that it's not, so, hey, how have you been? And you're then racking your brain trying to figure out, what do I say? Right? You're prepared for that time. And it's a bit of then becomes a give and a take. I've prepared as the patient. I expect you as the doctor to be prepared and to engage me when I ask you those questions. It also serves as a great spot for you as a patient to recognize, is this doc willing to listen? Are they
Yeah,
willing to answer my
that's a great
questions?
point.
Yeah.
And I do think preparedness feeds into the white coat syndrome. Some people, when you get to the doctor, you have a blank slate of a mind. And if the
Yeah.
more prepared you are, even have it written down, then that really helps you
Yep.
to drive the questions.
It helps you remember where you're coming from and where you're trying to go, which is at the end of it, everything that we're trying to address.
Exactly. And then you use the word witness in a very
Yes.
unique way.
Yeah.
Can you explain that?
Yeah. So we have prepared, and then we go into witness. And what witness is again, I don't expect you to be an expert, but if you know that the average amount of time that a doctor has with you is 7 minutes because the insurance companies want them to move from patient to patient to patient, because for them to keep that business open, they have to see X amount of patients to make the economics work. It then gives you the ability just to not be an expert, but witness, oh, this is why they're not spending as much time with me, or why I spend more time with a nurse, or I wanted to see the doctor, but I only got to see the PA, right? That begins to show you why what's happening is happening. And the same thing goes when you think about prescription drugs. Where am I getting it? Is my insurance company pushing me to do a mail order? Why is that? Well, it's more economical for them than sending you to your local, mom and pop pharmacy. They save more money when they control it. That's still up to you on if you want to participate or not. But just witnessing how the system is impacting you and the options that you have available, that's what we want patients to focus on.
And that is essential for our listener because you can witness that, like you mentioned,
But
in
yeah,
day-to-day life.
yeah.
Just being observant of how the system is operating around you.
When I changed my view, and it was really around 2012, 2013, where I started to be more empowered myself, I started to call things out and ask questions. And I'm not going to lie, I got kicked out of doctor's offices. That's okay. I didn't want to be there anyway, right? For example, being a chronic pain patient in the state of South Carolina, you're drug tested every month. The problem is that this particular doctor's office had their own toxicology laboratory. So they were choosing to do all the drug screens themselves and bill my insurance $1,000 every month. A typical tox screen by LabCorp or Quest, a national laboratory, it's about $50. So I just
Yeah.
simply asked, can you guys use one of my in-network labs? I'd rather not be hit with $1,000 bill. I don't care if you say, oh, we're not going to charge you for whatever it is. I said, I'd rather it not be that. I'd rather just deal with my insurance and go with a national laboratory that they recommend. They told me I could find another doctor's office. So
Wow.
that allowed me to witness the economics of their system and why they not only built their own toxicology lab, but why they were also doing compounding pharmacy. And at the end of the day, I was able to realize that's not a practice I wanted to stay at because it was all about the money for them, not about the patient outcomes. But it wasn't until I was able to understand and then witness everything taking place that became more empowered and found the right practices for me.
Right, and it really took you understanding and like you said, witnessing that transaction to them, and it did seem like in that instance, it was a transaction.
Very much a transaction. Yes. Yeah.
And when
I mean,
we move over
it's a violation of Stark law, right? And for those who don't know what that means, you cannot self-deal in healthcare. That's illegal, right? That's one of the claims, which I think is BS, on why doctors can't open a hospital these days. It's illegal. They're called con laws, which means that a doctor cannot open a hospital because there's competition with the hospitals already there. This all came under ACA. But at the end of the day, is a doctor who's opening a hospital really self-dealing, or is the practice that was opening these tertiary services to make more money self-dealing? Both can argue that they are or aren't, but one is set in law and one's not.
there you go. There are a lot of different rules and regulations in terms of the referral patterns in
Yeah.
healthcare.
Yep.
When you get to the R in empowered, it's recruit.
Hmm.
How does a patient recruit a care team, especially if they don't have family nearby?
So I'll give you an example. When we moved down here and I was having my surgery, we had no family around, but I wasn't so much worried about me because I had been through that surgery multiple times. Now, not 13 hours under the knife, but I've had multiple spine surgeries. Altogether, I've had 11 major surgeries, getting ready for number 12, unfortunately, with a knee replacement. But it was my wife that I was worried about, right? She had to sit there for 13 hours. Who was going to check on her? Who was going to support her? Who was going to support us with our two children who were active and needed to get to dance classes and needed to be shuttled to school? So it was recruiting a support team just as much as it was supporting a care team, right? That recruitment of my care team was my psychologist who helped me get off of the opiates I had to get off of, my therapist that I was able to talk to multiple times a week, the local advocate slash chiropractor, and getting his insights, and then him being the one who referred me to this doctor in Manhattan, right? So here I am in Charleston, planning to go to Manhattan to have surgery, and all of the travel that comes with that, and travel restrictions and all of that. Ultimately, it was only because I was able to recruit that care team and support team that afterwards was truly easy, so to speak, easier than it would have been.
And how was that? I've had back surgery in New York before, but I lived also in New York City at the time. That had to be a very difficult recovery.
I will say I woke up and knew everything was different. In and out of surgeries, I anticipate waking up with, that acute pain of where they've gone in. I mean, you can see my neck is pretty carved up in the front, but I have a zipper down my back about 9 inches. That hurt, of course, but I was used to pain in my arms and my hands like someone was driving a nail through my forearm. That was gone. We had anticipated staying in hospital provided housing for 2 days before flying back. What we didn't realize was that the doctor was going to release me within 8 hours of me waking up. Like, I don't want you here, go home. Now, we lucked out. My parents were in New Jersey. So we just called them up and said, listen, instead of staying in the housing here, which was like a dorm, let's go to your house where you have everything that is more comfortable. It's a house I'm familiar with. Let's do that. Right. So they were on call for us as well. So I will say the surgery for me was the easy part. It was the getting off of the opiates for 6 months before surgery after being on them for 18 years. That was the hard part.
Yeah, and that could be an entirely different episode. I think
Yeah.
we could dive into what that means for US healthcare system and patients and the mental health care system as well.
Yeah.
Moving on to the D in
Yeah.
empowered. So that's direct their
Yeah.
care for
Yep.
patients. Where do people normally get stuck when they're trying to direct their care?
In feeling comfortable enough to tell other people to do things. That's where most people get stuck. You know, as I've always heard it put, the greatest thing you can do for someone else is to allow them to serve you, right? If you've heard the term fill up your cup, people get their cup filled up by being able to support other people. But we as humans have this default nature of, I can't show weakness, right? So we're doing ourselves a disservice and the other person a disservice. And I want to go back to that piece that you're doing yourself a disservice because they are there for you. You need to get better, or you have your end goal for your health of what you want and what you expect. Why not allow others to help you? And when it comes to directing, I don't just mean your family members and your support team, I mean your care team too. Where have you been? What have surgeries looked like for you? If you've never had one, let them know that. Listen, I have no idea what to expect coming in. I don't know what to expect coming out. What types of things should I prepare at home? What will make this easier? You don't know what you don't know. And until you're asking those questions and then letting folks know if there are things you know, if there are doctors that you're aware of or preferred providers that you want included in your care, you have the ability to ask for that as well, right? If I go back to 2009, the first surgery that fused my spine successfully, it was at Jefferson in Philadelphia. And I was getting it done with the Jefferson neurosurgery team, but I requested that the Rothman Orthopedics group that's tied in with the Philadelphia Eagles also be in on the case because we can argue it's the spine and is that neuro or is that bone? It's both, right? So why not have both teams in there? And both teams were in on the case and it was successful. But most patients don't know that they can do that.
Right. I think that is great for our listeners to be aware of, that you can bring different support teams, different care and doctors to the
Yeah.
same case. And that's
Clergy, anybody, you name it. Anyone that's there to support you at the end of the day can be brought in and can be provided with any information you want them to have. That's what that HIPAA form that you sign off on for every doctor's appointment is all about.
every single one.
Yep.
So now that we've gone through what it means for a patient to be empowered, and I think that's such a really foundational element that all of our listeners can walk away with. My question then turns to, once you're empowered, how does technology start to play a role, or where does it not play a role? And
Yeah.
we've discussed AI forcing clinicians in some instances to be more human. What do you mean by that?
So if we start on the clinician side, what we're beginning to see is AI deployment in electronic medical records and electronic health records. So what that has typically looked like in some of the academic centers is AI being built in to listen in to that dialogue between a patient and their doctor and recommend questions to the doctor. That we talked about before, the cookie cutter approach of medicine. This is forcing them to be human again. Maybe they're missing something you're saying or a hesitation that you have or that underlying question that you want to ask but don't feel like you can. That's where AI is prodding the clinician to do things differently. So that's important, I think is impressive. The danger that I always would look out for in any technology is, when does that become a crutch? Right?
That's true.
Because I would challenge providers that they're living in a time that they have access to more information than ever. Their diagnosis should be faster and easier because of the tools that are available. So focus your time on the time with the patient. You're going to get so much more valuable insights and information out of that patient discussion than you'll get out of anything else that will allow that work that you're doing on your own to really understand the problem this patient has to be that much easier.
Yeah. And that's a through line throughout a lot of industries, I'm finding, when it comes to AI. AI gives you more time with the patient, or if it's in a
Your
different
customer,
business,
yeah.
the client, the customer, and utilizing it in that way benefits the whole system.
As I've always heard it put, slow down to go faster.
Yeah.
Right. So that's exactly what this is enabling is yes, we're going to slow down with the patient, or we're going to slow down with our customers or customer service and spend more time there. but we're going to put out a better product. We're going to have more customers because that trust is being built, something that's greatly missing in healthcare.
And when it comes to the patient
Mm.
themselves, how would you recommend using or not using AI?
I've been fascinated by it. AI is very different than Googling. Okay. We used to tell people all the time, please do not Google a drug or Google a disease, because typically you'll come back with cancer or death, right? Like you always get to the end of that road and it's negative. What I've noticed with AI, even using it most recently for myself, just to understand some of the symptoms I've been having, hip pain. So, for example, needing a knee replacement. Why is that? What's causing that? What are some exercises or stretches I can do to alleviate that? There's so much value there. When we talk about that education component, this is where I think AI can play a really big help, because I even asked it to help me come up with questions when I'm interviewing doctors for this upcoming surgery, that I can understand who's just looking to cut versus who's looking to understand my situation and what I want out of it. Because when you have the name surgeon, you're more than likely looking to get into surgery, right? Is that right for me? I don't know. I think so. But AI has done a great job of helping me to challenge that notion and understand how best to ask the right questions to my providers.
That's a great way to use AI.
Hmm.
I love that you put that out there because giving ideas and in questions to ask, it's another way you can become more educated. And sometimes people do have that blank slate syndrome where they don't
Yep.
know where to
The deer in
go.
headlights. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, and it's one of the I would say the loudest thing I've been hearing in healthcare and AI this week is ChatGPT Health,
Right.
which just launched. And I can't get access to it because I have a business account on ChatGPT. It's only allowing individuals, but this is a specific LLM for medicine, which is going to be really interesting to see how that empowers the patient community.
That will be really interesting to see, especially from your vantage point
Yeah.
of a patient advocate to
Yep.
see how that evolves your role at
Yeah.
all, if it
Yeah. Oh,
does.
big time. Big time. I mean, if patients just knew, or if people just knew how to prompt AI, as you know, the bounds are endless ultimately, right? I mean, AI is being utilized to identify breast cancer earlier in radiological studies, right? It's able to see things that the human eye can't, right? And especially changes in studies that are being done. But the ability to comb through reams of data and understand what the most likely scenario is based off the symptoms that you have, at least begins to give you a starting point. And
Right.
again, then asking it to help you develop questions for an upcoming appointment makes you that much more stronger of a patient.
Agreed. When it comes to bots and AI bots in healthcare, what, if any, are the concerns about transparency?
HIPAA is always the sticking point, right? Do you know it's there? Do you know who's answering your questions? And what's it been trained on? And where does that data go? Right? That's always the biggest issue for a patient population is who's listening and who's going to get the data. And there's unfortunately been a lot of issues with electronic health records and people being sold to off of their electronic health record, right? Some data breaches that have obviously happened. So that's the biggest concern that the patient community has. But I would say that the benefits are completely outweighing the risks right now, just when people dive in and use it,
Right.
right? As long as they're confident and comfortable with the security behind it, that's the key. So we're seeing a lot of companies come to market with. There's one in particular in glioblastoma, and you can go and ask this bot that's been trained on clinical trials, been trained on the disease state itself, side effect profiles of different treatment protocols, you name it. May you be the patient or you be the caregiver. And that has been an extremely beneficial tool for that patient population, which is very small. There's not a lot of folks with glioblastoma that you can talk to. And this is what it's allowing.
Yeah, there is so much possibility with the use of AI in healthcare, and it'll be interesting to see exactly how far it can go.
Mhm.
When we discuss data systems, you've said that patients are a massive data set for health systems
Untapped data set. Yeah.
and that they're underutilized. Can you explain that for our listeners that may not
Yeah.
be as aware.
So when you think about your typical doctor's appointment, you have a lifetime of experience, right? If we go back to, let's say, my chiropractor, who was my advocate, as I said, he didn't just dive into my surgical history on my spine. He wanted to know about my knee, which I had 3 surgeries on before I broke my neck, because that has the ability, obviously, to impact my spinal cord based off how I'm walking. He also then went and got all of the surgical notes for every surgery I've ever had. Now, without digital systems, would that have been possible? I don't know, right? And then be able to pull those together. Now, this was before the true robust growth of AI, but to even be able to feed those in and allow the AI system to begin to ruminate and understand what's happening. I mean, for him, it showed him that the imaging was missing. There was a missing piece in imaging that the current standard wasn't providing, which was movement. X-rays are still, CT scans are still, MRIs are still. The human body moves. So he did what's called the DMX, which is a moving X-ray. That's how he found my problem, right? So there's a massive opportunity here. But again, it was only because he talked to me and understood what my mornings were like, what were my afternoons like, what were these tension migraines I was getting 4 to 5 times a week? What was that coming from? No other doctor had ever asked those questions. And it was only because he did that he was able to understand what he then needed to do. Most health systems are not doing that. They see the
It,
patient more as a nuisance or a side effect of healthcare rather than a data set.
well, it really does come down to patient outcomes. I guess, why do patient reported outcomes themselves often signal problems before a dashboard, which most executives in
Yeah.
healthcare look at dashboards?
So dashboards are always lagging indicators. If you talk to the patient up front, may it be what just happened in this past appointment, what's going on between appointments, what are you preparing for with the next one? You're going to have that much more line of sight into missing education gaps, health literacy issues, all different tools that you can create, but also identify problems in your own system. I mean, simple things like staffing issues, right? Most of the time, what they're looking at are leap scores and patient satisfaction scores coming out of hospital stays. That's the only way that they then begin to know, okay, we have fewer nurses than we need. Well, that's a minimum of 90 days away every time you want to look at it, right? Whereas you can stop that patient before they walk out the door and have a conversation. How was your stay? Is there anything that you think we should change? Do you feel that you were comforted and kept comfortable during your stay?
And you'll
Why is
get
that
that
so difficult?
feedback. You'll get
Immediately.
that much more quickly than the survey that they may or
Yeah.
may not fill out. I'm
Yeah.
sure.
And not to mention, they know how to game the system when it comes to those surveys too, right? Because if we can get you that survey as a hospital before you get your explanation of benefits and see how much it's going to cost, you're going to be more positive in your feedback, right? When you
Mhm.
add the finances, different story.
If you were advising a hospital CEO, what's one operational change that you would make tomorrow?
Operationalize the patient voice in one department immediately. Identify what that needs to look like. So I take the same empowered model for health systems. Same acronym, different words. So you have to educate yourself on right now, how are we utilizing the patient voice? And what does the measurement for the M, what does the measurement currently look like? And what are those measures versus what we could be getting? What are we missing? Right. And how does a simple dialogue between, it could be a nurse, it could be a third person administrator in the hospital. How does a dialogue between the patient and that individual change the game? And if you do that in one department, you will see the changes that are not only able to be made, but the efficiencies that you can drive and the amount of money that you're leaving on the table.
Yeah, it's hard to translate that into ROI. I think you can, but
You can.
I think that once we start translating that more into ROI, we'll see those changes
Most
perhaps be more
hospital
significant.
most hospital CEOs are worried about competition. If you are serving the patient population and they feel listened to and they feel supported, you're going to beat the competition every time. So if you want to keep that patient and keep that family and make sure that everyone's telling their friends and loved ones that your hospital listens, you're going to get patients. The competition won't matter.
Exactly. I think that's a great piece of advice for the
Yeah.
CEOs that are listening.
Yeah.
For your trajectory and your next steps, you're writing a book right now. Can you tell us a little bit more about the book and who it's for?
The book is being written mainly for patients to help them understand this empowered model, but also the fact that if it took me this long, it actually doesn't have to take you this long, right? It's my goal to show people how someone who was educated on the health system can still get stuck in it, and that it's okay. It doesn't have to be the end. Again, just because you hit the limit of one doctor or one health system, keep going. If you want to be better, you can get better. And that was my decision that I wanted to make, was that I knew that my health could be better than where it was at 19, where it was at 28, 38. And now, I had a rebirth, so to speak, May 15th, 2023. I want everyone to be able to have that epiphany, but also have that sense of accomplishment and feeling when you come out of whatever treatment it might be or operation that you might have, and feeling like your whole life is now ahead of you.
Right. And that's such an important part in anyone's journey, twofold. One, recognizing there is a way out, even
Yeah.
if you haven't found it yet.
Yep.
And two, and once you've reached that epiphany like you had, the component of giving back and letting others know that it's achievable for them too. And can you dive into what We the Patients is
Yeah.
a little bit?
So We the Patients is truly it's a super PAC that is built on the premise that patients deserve to know everything that's taking place in their care. And with that in mind, we're starting with the cancer patient population. Everybody has a PAC, everyone has a lobbyist, so to speak, on the Hill, except for the patients. And that's what we want to change. That's what We the Patients is all about. It's a grassroots educational campaign and lobby to serve the patient population first in a very purple issue, healthcare, right? Ensuring that everyone gets the care that they need and deserve. It shouldn't come down to how much you know or how educated you are. And one of the key tenets of We the Patients is what we call the Cancer Patient Protection Act, which is ensuring that every cancer patient has access to an independent patient advocate. So again, it's not based off of how much you know. It's not based off of what the hospital wants to tell you or what your insurance company wants to tell you. It's what that advocate is able to guide you through.
What a great initiative overall. And like you said, it should really be a purple
Yeah,
issue.
it is. It is.
And for that organization, what does success look like for you in the next year?
It's a slow burn, I'll say that. But we're starting first on January 29th with our first live event. So we're going to run these more than likely every couple of months around the country to get out. And for example, we're doing it in the Raleigh, actually in Chapel Hill, specifically, Chapel Hill, North Carolina, where we'll have experts, so to speak, from all areas of healthcare that are patient focused and want to empower patients. Um, a lot of folks from different parts of the healthcare ecosystem, may that be pharma, biotech, med device. Insurance is not an attendee, unfortunately, at this point, but hospital systems, the North Carolina Medical Society is a group that we're reaching out to get them to come as well. At the end of the day, we want to re-empower the patient, but we also have to ensure that the providers are ready for that as well.
That makes sense. And this has been a great conversation overall. As we start to wrap up, what's one step a patient can take this week to feel more empowered themselves? And then one step a clinician or health system leader can take perhaps this quarter to better hear and support patients?
So for a patient, I'm going to go the AI route. I want you just to talk to ChatGPT or you name the model and say, this is what I'm feeling. Is this in alignment with a diagnosis if you have one? Or what does this potentially point to as a problem or opportunity for you? Then, if you'd like, ask it to develop some questions that you can ask your doctor to better understand it for your next appointment. Very, very simple piece, but I would hope that as a patient, you can see how much power you now have in your hands to understand your disease state, understand what you're facing, and know that you have a tool in your pocket, right? From a provider's perspective, and a hospital perspective, I would just challenge you to ask a patient one more question. It's the only place I want you to start. What do you think about the care that you're currently receiving? Is it on par with what you would expect? Let the patient go at that point. You'll hear everything you need to hear to begin to allow your brain to go to what changes do I need to make and how I engage this patient to ensure that they not only feel heard, but that you're getting all the information you need to make the right diagnosis and get them to the right treatment that they're going to stay on.
And I would challenge our listeners. I said this quarter for that
Yeah.
question, but that could be
It could be
this
tomorrow.
week,
Yeah.
tomorrow,
Yeah.
as soon as for that piece of advice. So thank you, Matt, for being here. I really appreciate your guidance. And more importantly, I appreciate the work you're doing for
Thank you.
patients.
Thank you.
And I hope our listeners have a true understanding of what patient advocacy is and what they can do to empower themselves in their own patient care. And so thank you for bringing the patient back to the center of this conversation where it should
Should
be.
be. Yep.
And we'll have Matt's resources and contacts in the show notes. And thank you for listening.